Isabella Joan had learned three truths by the time life had beaten her down enough to understand them. Poverty doesn't break you, pity does. Family is the only wealth that matters, and billionaires don't cry at funerals, they negotiate. The fluorescent lights of Sacred Heart Hospital had become her second home. She knew every flickering bulb, every stain on the linoleum floor, every sympathetic look from nurses who'd watched her mother deteriorate over months of brutal treatments. Isabella worked the morning shift in patient registration, then switched her badge to the evening shift in medical records. Two jobs, same building, different colored scrubs. Nobody asked questions when you were desperate enough to work until your feet bled. Her mother lay 3 floors above, tubes running into her arms like invasive vines. Stage 4. The words sounded so clinical, so detached from the reality of watching someone you love disappear in increments. The experimental treatment existed, a miracle wrapped in pharmaceutical promises, but miracles cost money that families like theirs would never possess. Miss Joan, you've got a spill in the cafeteria. Someone important just made a scene. Isabella grabbed the mop and bucket, her body moving on autopilot. Important people made messes. Regular people cleaned them. This was the natural order of her world. The cafeteria held the lingering tension of something unpleasant. A tall man stood near the beverage station, coffee dripping from his pristine white shirt, his face carved from ice and fury. Everything about him screamed wealth. The watch that probably cost more than her annual salary, the tailored pants, the leather shoes that had never known a scuff mark. You need to watch where you're going. He snapped at a teenage volunteer who stood frozen, apologizing repeatedly. Something in Isabella's exhausted soul rebelled. She'd spent too many hours bowing to people who believed money bought them the right to cruelty. It was an accident, Isabella said, her voice cutting through his tirade. She apologized. You can leave now. The man turned, and Isabella saw his eyes for the first time. Grey, cold, utterly devoid of warmth. Eyes that had forgotten how to see other humans as anything more than obstacles or instruments. Excuse me. Your shirt is ruined. Your pride is wounded. But terrorizing a child won't fix either problem. Go change. We'll clean the mess. His jaw tightened. Do you know who I am? Someone who thinks coffee stains are a crisis. In this building, people are fighting to breathe. Perspective might help. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or anger, so controlled it had frozen solid. Then he turned and walked away without another word, leaving Isabella to clean coffee from floors worn thin by tragedy. She didn't think about him again. Men like that existed in a different universe, one where problems could be solved with money and phones calls. Her universe required mops and double shifts. That evening, Isabella sat beside her mother's bed, holding a hand that felt like tissue paper. Her little sister, Amara, had fallen asleep in the corner chair, textbooks scattered around her like fallen soldiers. The girl was brilliant. Scholarships pending, a future bright enough to blind, but none of it mattered if they lost their mother. Baby girl, her mother whispered, voice barely stronger than breath. Don't sacrifice yourself for me. Mama, don't talk like that. I've lived my life. You haven't started yours. Promise me. Stop. You're going to beat this. Her mother's smile held too much knowledge, too much acceptance. Isabella couldn't bear it. The next morning brought a letter from the hospital's financial department. Payment arrangements had failed. Treatment would cease without immediate payment. The numbers might as well have been written in a foreign language for all the possibility they represented. Isabella stood in the hospital parking lot, the letter trembling in her hands when a black car pulled up beside her. The rear window lowered, and those grey eyes from yesterday stared out at her. Get in. Absolutely not. An older man in an expensive suit emerged from the passenger side. Miss Joan, my name is Lawrence Petit. I'm an attorney. My client would like to discuss a proposal with you. I'm not interested in proposals from men who terrorize teenagers. The attorney's lips twitched, almost a smile. Please, 5 minutes of your time. If you're not interested, we'll leave and never contact you again. Something in his tone suggested this wasn't a threat. Exhaustion and curiosity made her stupid. She got in the car. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. The man from yesterday sat across from her, studying her face like she was a problem requiring solution. You have a dying mother and a sister you're putting through school. You work 2 jobs and volunteer at a women's shelter on weekends. Your landlord is filing eviction papers. You're drowning. Rage flooded Isabella's veins. You investigated me? I investigate everyone who insults me, usually to destroy them. But you present a unique opportunity. Get to the point or let me out. He leaned forward, and for the first time, she saw something human in his expression. Desperation, maybe, or exhaustion that matched her own. My father died 2 weeks ago. His will contains a clause that requires me to marry within a month and remain married for 1 year, or I lose everything to relatives who will dismantle everything he built. I need a wife. You need money. This is a transaction. Isabella laughed, a harsh, broken sound. You want to buy a wife like you'd buy a car? I want to hire someone for a role. 1 year, $50 million. Your family's medical bills paid in full. Your sister's education guaranteed. All I need is your presence at events and your signature on papers. The number was so absurd, it didn't feel real. Isabella's mind couldn't process that much money, couldn't translate it into anything meaningful. This is insane. This is necessity. For both of us. She reached for the door handle. I don't care how much money you have. You can't buy people. And you sure as hell can't buy me. Everyone has a price. Isabella turned back and her voice cut like sharpened glass. My mother taught me that dignity costs nothing and is worth everything. Whatever you're offering, it's not enough. She got out, slammed the door, and walked away. Behind her, she heard the attorney say something, heard the car idle for a long moment before driving away. That night, Isabella held her mother's hand and listened to the machines beep their mechanical lullabies. The treatment was ending. The countdown had begun. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text message with just an address and a time. Tomorrow. If you change your mind. If you don't show, I'll never contact you again. Isabella deleted the message. Then she stared at her mother's sleeping face and wondered if pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. 3 days later, her mother stopped breathing for 47 seconds before the medical team revived her. Isabella stood outside the room, shaking so hard she thought her bones might shatter. The rain started as she left the hospital. She stood in the downpour, face tilted toward the sky, letting water wash away tears she'd been holding back for months. Then she walked to the address from the deleted text message. The building was all glass and steel, reaching toward clouds like it had every right to own the sky. Security tried to stop her, soaking wet, wearing scrubs, looking like a drowned storm. But someone upstairs must have given instructions. They let her through. She took the elevator to the top floor. The doors opened to reveal the man from the car, standing by floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city he probably thought he owned. He turned when she entered. No surprise registered on his face. He'd known she would come. Miss Joan, I have conditions. I expected you would. He gestured to a conference table where folders lay waiting. Everything prepared, everything anticipated. It should have made her angry. Instead, it made her tired. My family's medical expenses, all of them, paid in full immediately. Already arranged pending your signature. My sister's education, through university. Whatever she needs. The trust is established. $10 million in a separate account. For charity work. I control it completely. His eyebrow lifted, the first sign of surprise. Charitable work. Some of us remember what it feels like to have nothing. I want to help people you'll never see from your glass towers. Done. Anything else? Isabella stepped closer, needing him to see her clearly. If I do this, we have rules. We don't pretend this is anything but a transaction. No touching, no intimacy, no pretending we're something we're not. You want a wife for show? Fine. But you don't get pieces of me that aren't for sale. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Or recognition of another soul who'd learned to build armor from necessity. Agreed. I'll add one more clause. He slid a document across the table. At the bottom, in precise legal language, one sentence stood out. If either party develops romantic feelings, the contract terminates immediately with no financial compensation to the party who broke this clause. Isabella's laugh was sharp. You actually think someone could fall in love with you? I think people convince themselves of many things when money is involved. This protects us both. I could never love someone who sees people as transactions. Good. I prefer it that way. She picked up the pen. Her hand shook. Somewhere in this building, her mother's treatment was being authorized. Somewhere, her sister's future was being secured. Somewhere, women without options were getting help from money this man would never miss. The price was herself. 1 year of her life. 1 year of pretending to be something she wasn't, for someone who couldn't see her anyway. Isabella signed her name. Thiago Jace signed below her signature. The wedding is scheduled for next week. My attorney will handle the details. Your name, Isabella said quietly. I just sold myself to you, and I don't even know your name. Thiago Jace, Isabella Joan, though I suppose you already knew that. I make it a point to know everything about my investments. The word landed like a physical blow. Investment, not person. Not partner. Investment. 1 year, Isabella said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her chest. Then I walk away, and we never see each other again. That's the agreement. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Mr. Jace, that clause about falling in love? You don't have to worry. I'd rather die than give my heart to someone who bought me like property. As the elevator descended, carrying her away from glass towers and impossible money, Isabella realized she'd just made a deal with someone who'd forgotten how to be human, and somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered the question she couldn't answer. What happens when you sell your life to save the people you love, and you realize too late that the price was your soul? Chapter 2. The Contract That Chains Souls. The folder arrived at Isabella's apartment 3 days before the wedding. Inside, a contract thicker than any book she'd ever read, each page outlining the terms of their arrangement with the cold precision of a surgical knife. She sat on her threadbare couch, reading by lamplight because the overhead fixture had burned out weeks ago and she hadn't had time to replace it. Amara was at her friend's house. Isabella had made sure her sister wouldn't witness this moment. Page 7 detailed public appearance requirements. Page 12 outlined separate living quarters in his home. Page 15 specified grounds for immediate termination. Page 23 described the financial penalties for breach of contract. Nowhere in 40 pages did the word love appear, except in that single, devastating clause. Her phone rang. Thiago Jace, the screen announced. She'd programmed his number the day she signed, marking it like you'd mark poison in a cabinet. You received the contract. I'm reading it now. You really thought of everything, didn't you? Thoroughness prevents misunderstandings. Isabella flipped to a page at random. Section 8.3. The wife shall maintain appropriate physical appearance at all times when in public or when household staff are present. Are you serious? You'll be representing my family? Standards exist. Standards, right. I'm a decoration you're renting. You're a partner in an arrangement. Both parties have obligations. She wanted to throw the phone through the wall. Instead, she forced her voice calm. What happens if your family suspects this isn't real? The pause on his end lasted too long. They won't. You sound uncertain. My mother is perceptive. We'll need to be convincing. Convincing, Isabella repeated. You mean I'll need to lie well enough to fool people who've known you your entire life? Yes. The bluntness should have shocked her. Instead, it confirmed everything she already knew about this man. He dealt in truth the way surgeons dealt in scalpels, cleanly, precisely, without concern for the damage it inflicted. The wedding is at St. Catherine's Cathedral. The guest list numbers 300. The reception follows at the Grandstone Estate. Everything is arranged. 300 people watching us lie. 300 witnesses, making the marriage legally unassailable. Isabella closed her eyes. My mother wants to attend. That's not advisable. Her condition... I wasn't asking permission, Mr. Jace. I'm informing you. My mother will be there even if we have to bring the medical equipment with us. Another pause. I'll arrange medical staff and a private room where she can rest. The small concession felt like victory, though Isabella knew it cost him nothing. Thank you. It's practical. A wedding without the bride's family invites questions. Of course, nothing he did emerged from kindness. Everything served the contract. I added my own clauses, Isabella said, flipping to the pages she'd inserted. I need them included before I sign. Send them to my attorney. I'm sending them to you. This is between us, not lawyers. She heard papers shuffling on his end. I'm listening. Clause 37. I maintain complete autonomy over my charitable work. You don't interfere, question, or attempt to control how I spend that money. Agreed. Clause 38. My sister visits whenever she wants. Your home becomes her home too. Within reason. No, not within reason. Whenever she wants. She's all I have, the silence stretched. Agreed. Clause 39. We don't pretend affection when we're alone. No games, no manipulation, no testing boundaries. What you see is what you get. That works both ways. I'm counting on it. Anything else? Isabella stared at the clause she'd written last, the one that mattered most. Clause 40. When this ends, you don't follow me. You don't check on me. You don't suddenly decide you want to know how I'm doing. We walk away clean, like we never existed in each other's lives. The silence on his end felt heavy. You think I'd follow you? I think wealthy men sometimes confuse ownership with interest. I want it clear. After this year, I'm not yours. I never was. You'll have your clause. They finalized the details with the emotional investment of two people arranging a furniture delivery. Time, place, expectations. Everything reduced to logistics. One more thing, Tiago said before hanging up. The ring. I had something made. I don't need a real ring. The contract requires authenticity. People examine these things. Fine, whatever you think is appropriate. It's not about appropriate. It's about believable. Isabella wanted to laugh. Believable. As if anything about this arrangement could be believed by anyone who understood what love actually meant. The night before the wedding, her mother called her to the hospital. Isabella arrived to find her sitting up in bed, the strongest she'd looked in weeks. The experimental treatment was working. The miracle was happening, but her mother's eyes held something that made Isabella's stomach clench. Baby, sit down. Mama, you should be resting. I'll rest when I'm dead. Right now I need to talk to you about this wedding. Isabella sat on the edge of the bed, taking her mother's hand. The skin felt warmer, more alive. Hope was a dangerous thing. You're marrying a man you don't love. There was no point in lying. I'm saving your life. That's not the same as living yours. It's 1 year, Mama, 1 year, and you get to see Amara graduate. You get to watch her go to university. You get to be here. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. And what do you get? I get to keep you. Oh, baby. That's not enough, Isabella's voice broke. It's everything. They held each other in the hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and desperation. Outside, the city prepared for a wedding that would be photographed and broadcast and picked apart by strangers who would never know the truth. Promise me something, her mother whispered. Promise you won't lose yourself in this. You're not a transaction, Isabella. You're my daughter. You're brilliant and fierce and capable of so much love. Don't let this man make you forget that, I promise. But as Isabella left the hospital that night, she wondered if it was a promise she could keep. The morning of the wedding arrived wrapped in cold sunlight. Stylists descended on Isabella's apartment like a swarm, transforming her into someone she didn't recognize. The dress was beautiful, everyone said so, but wearing it felt like wearing a costume for a play she'd never auditioned for. Amara helped with the veil, her young face serious. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do, but you don't love him. Isabella looked at her sister in the mirror. Love isn't always what matters most. Sometimes survival is. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard you say. Maybe it was. But truth often sounded sad when you spoke it out loud. The cathedral bells rang as Isabella arrived. Cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted questions she didn't answer. Inside, 300 people she'd never met waited to witness her sacrifice wrapped in silk and lies. Her mother sat in the front row, oxygen tank beside her, tears streaming down her face. Beside her, Amara held her hand, both of them trying to smile like this was a celebration instead of a funeral. The music began. Isabella walked alone down the aisle. Her father had disappeared when she was young, teaching her early that men often left when things got hard. Tiago stood at the altar, looking exactly like what he was, a man fulfilling an obligation. He didn't smile when she approached. He simply watched her, those grey eyes revealing nothing. The priest spoke words about love and commitment and sacred bonds. Each word felt like a stone dropping into a well that had no bottom. Do you, Tiago Jace, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice held no warmth, no joy, no emotion beyond duty. Do you, Isabella Joan, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? She looked at him, really looked at him, saw the rigid set of his shoulders, the clenched jaw, the complete absence of anything resembling happiness. This was the man she was binding herself to. This stranger who saw her as a solution to a problem. I do. The words tasted like ash. He slid the ring onto her finger, a diamond that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. It felt heavy, like a shackle made of light. You may kiss the bride. They'd practiced this moment with his attorney present, making sure it looked believable. Tiago leaned in, his hand barely touching her waist. Their lips met for exactly 3 seconds. No warmth, no connection. Just two people playing roles they'd been hired to perform. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, music swelled, and Isabella felt absolutely nothing except the weight of the ring on her finger and the knowledge that she'd just sold herself to a man who would never see her as anything more than a contract fulfilled. As they walked back down the aisle, hands linked for the cameras, Tiago leaned close enough to whisper, "You performed admirably. So did you. The hard part is over." Isabella glanced at the year stretching ahead of them, at the home she'd have, to share with this stranger, at the life she'd have to fake. "No," she whispered back, "the hard part is just beginning." That night, after the reception ended and the guests departed and the facade could finally drop, Isabella stood in her designated quarters in Tiago's mansion. The East Wing, he'd called it. Her prison for the next year. The room was beautiful and impersonal, decorated by someone who'd never asked what she liked. Everything coordinated, nothing chosen with care. A hotel room masquerading as a home. A knock on the door interrupted her unpacking. Tiago stood in the hallway, still wearing his wedding suit, looking as comfortable in it as most men looked in jeans. "We need to establish some ground rules for daily life." "Of course we do. Breakfast is served at 7. I expect you to attend." "Anything else, Master?" His jaw tightened. "This arrangement works if we respect each other's time and space." Respect. That's rich, coming from someone who bought a wife. You sold yourself. Don't pretend you're a victim in this. The words hit like a slap. Isabella stepped closer, refusing to let him see the wound. "You're right. I made this choice. But don't you dare stand there and act like we're equals. You have all the power. You always will." "Then why are you still fighting?" "Because it's the only thing I have left." They stood in the doorway, two people bound by law and contract, but separated by an ocean of misunderstanding and mutual distrust. "Good night, Miss Joan. It's Mrs. Jace now. Remember, that's what you paid for." He walked away without responding, leaving Isabella alone in her beautiful cage. As she lay in bed that night, ring heavy on her finger, she thought about her mother's words, "Don't lose yourself in this." But as sleep finally claimed her, Isabella wondered if it was already too late. Chapter 3. The world watches her fall. The media discovered Isabella's past before dawn broke on their second day of marriage. She woke to her phone exploding with notifications, alerts from apps she didn't remember downloading, messages from numbers she didn't recognize. The world had found her, and the world was not kind. The first headline made her stomach drop. Billionaires. Mystery bride. From poverty to power in one ceremony. The articles got worse from there. Every eviction notice she'd ever received, now photographed and published. Her mother's medical debt, itemized and displayed like evidence at a trial. Amara's scholarship rejections, turned into proof of unworthiness. They called her ambitious. They called her calculating. They called her things far worse that she couldn't bear to read fully. Gold digger gets her prize, one tabloid declared, accompanied by a photo of Isabella from the wedding, her face frozen, in a moment that photographers had captured to make her look greedy rather than terrified. She was still reading when someone knocked. A woman in her 50s entered, without waiting for permission, carrying a tray with breakfast Isabella hadn't requested. "Mrs. Jace, I'm Ingrid, Mr. Jace's household coordinator. I manage the staff and ensure things run smoothly." The way she said Mrs. Jace made it sound like a joke they were both in on. "Thank you, but I can get my own breakfast." Mr. Jace prefers consistency. "Breakfast is at 7. You're expected in the dining room." Isabella glanced at her phone. 6:45. "I'll be there." Ingrid's eyes flicked to the phone screen, to the headline still visible. "I'd recommend avoiding social media for a while. The public can be cruel to people who rise above their station." The words were delivered with perfect politeness, but the message underneath was clear. "You don't belong here. We all know it. Thank you for the advice." When Ingrid left, Isabella threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, screen cracking in a pattern that looked like a spider web. Appropriate, she thought. She'd walked straight into a web, and now she was stuck. The dining room could have seated 20 people comfortably. Tiago sat at the head of an absurdly long table, reading something on a tablet, a cup of coffee cooling beside him. He didn't look up when she entered. Isabella took a seat at the opposite end, maximizing the distance between them. "You should sit closer. The staff will notice." "Let them notice. The contract specifies..." "The contract specified public appearances. Last I checked, your dining room doesn't qualify as public." He finally looked at her, and she saw something new in his expression. Not anger exactly, more like calculation, as if he was reassessing her value. "You saw the articles. Hard to miss them. They'll die down. Something else will capture their attention." "Easy for you to say. They're not dissecting your entire life." "They've been dissecting my life since I was born. You get used to it." Isabella laughed bitterly. "I don't want to get used to it. I want people to mind their own damn business." "Then you married the wrong person." They ate in silence after that, the only sounds the quiet clink of silverware against expensive china. Isabella counted the minutes until she could escape. A woman glided into the dining room like she owned not just the house, but the air inside it. She was striking, the kind of beauty that came from excellent bone structure and expensive maintenance. Everything about her radiated cold elegance, from her perfectly styled hair to her designer clothes that probably cost more than Isabella's entire wardrobe. "So this is her." Tiago stood. "Mother, I wasn't expecting you this morning." "Clearly. Otherwise you might have warned your wife that I'd be conducting a proper introduction." Isabella stood, extending her hand. "Mrs. Jace, it's nice to meet you." The woman looked at Isabella's hand like it might be diseased. After a pause that lasted just long enough to be insulting, she took it limply, released it immediately. "Call me Kathleen. I've never been one for false formality." The irony of that statement coming from someone who embodied formality wasn't lost on Isabella. "Please, sit. I won't take much of your time." Kathleen settled into a chair with the practiced grace of someone who'd been taught proper posture before she could walk. "I wanted to meet the woman who managed to capture my son's attention so completely that he married her without his family's knowledge. It happened quickly," Isabella said carefully. "Quite. One might even say suspiciously quickly." Tiago cut in, his voice sharp. "Mother!" "Oh, don't be tedious, darling. I'm simply making conversation." Kathleen turned her full attention to Isabella. and it felt like being examined under a microscope. "Tell me about yourself, dear. Where did you attend university?" "I didn't. I went straight to work after school." "I see. And your family? What do they do?" "My mother is recovering from illness. My sister is still in school." "How unfortunate." "And your father?" "Not in the picture." Each answer seemed to confirm something in Cateline's mind. Isabella could practically see her adding up the evidence. No education, no family connections, no resources. The verdict was clear. "You must understand, this is all quite shocking for us. Tiago has never showed interest in marriage before. And then suddenly, this whirlwind romance." She let the sentence trail off meaningfully. "Love doesn't follow timelines," Isabella said, forcing the word love past her lips. "Love." Cateline smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "How refreshingly naive. Tell me, dear, what is it about my son that you find so irresistible? His charm, his warmth, his sparkling personality." The sarcasm was a blade wrapped in velvet. "I find him genuine," Isabella said, meeting Cateline's gaze steadily. "In a world full of people who pretend to be something they're not, he's exactly what he appears to be. And what's that? Honest about who he is." Cateline's smile sharpened. "Honesty." Yes, Tiago learned that from his father, along with several other valuable lessons about business and family obligations. Something in her tone made Isabella's skin crawl. Tiago had gone completely still, his face a mask. "I'm hosting a luncheon next week," Cateline continued, "for you to meet the rest of the family and our close friends. I'm sure you'll find it illuminating. I look forward to it." "I'm sure you do." After Cateline left, the dining room felt like a tomb. Tiago stared at his plate, not eating, not speaking. "She hates me," Isabella said. "She hates everyone." "That's not true. She hates me specifically." "I could see it. You're reading too much into it." "Am I? Or are you just used to cruelty disguised as civility?" He looked at her then, and for just a moment she saw something beneath the ice. Something wounded and raw and quickly hidden. "My mother believes love is a weakness. She's not entirely wrong." "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. It's realistic." Isabella gathered her dishes, ignoring Ingrid, who appeared immediately to take them. "I'm going out." "Where?" "The women's shelter. I volunteer there, remember? The car will take you. I can take the bus. You're my wife now." "You don't take the bus. I'm your contract employee. I'll take whatever transportation I want." She left before he could respond, desperate for air that didn't taste like money and judgment. The women's shelter was located in a part of the city that Tiago had probably never visited. The building was old but clean, run by volunteers who cared more about people than profit. Isabella had been coming here for months, long before any billionaire had crashed into her life. Isabella! Maria, one of the coordinators, pulled her into a hug. "We saw the wedding photos. Good you didn't tell us you were dating someone. It happened fast. You went from single to married in less than a month." "What's he like?" Isabella thought about Tiago's cold eyes, his clinical assessment of their arrangement, the way he looked at her like she was a problem he'd solved. "He's complicated. Rich complicated or regular complicated." "Is there a difference?" Maria laughed, but her eyes were concerned. "You okay?" "You seem different." "I'm fine. Just adjusting to everything," but she wasn't fine. She was drowning in a life that felt like someone else's, wearing clothes that cost more than she used to earn in a month, living in a house where every room echoed with emptiness. She spent the afternoon helping at the shelter, losing herself in other people's problems because they were simpler than her own. A woman needed help filling out housing applications. Another needed someone to watch her kids while she went to a job interview. Simple needs with practical solutions. When Isabella finally returned to the mansion, she found Raphael waiting in the entrance hall. Tiago's younger brother shared some facial features, but none of the coldness. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. The infamous Isabella. "I've been dying to meet you. You must be Raphael." "Guilty. I'd have been at the wedding, but I was traveling. Just got back this morning and heard I have a sister-in-law." Sister-in-law. The term felt foreign. "Want to get out of this mausoleum." I know a coffee place that serves desserts that'll make you forget your troubles for at least 10 minutes. Isabella surprised herself by agreeing. Anything was better than wandering the mansion's empty halls. The coffee shop was cozy and warm. Everything the mansion wasn't. Raphael ordered something obscenely sweet and convinced Isabella to do the same. So, my brother, how do you manage to convince someone to marry him? Did he promise to try smiling once a year? Despite everything, Isabella laughed. Something like that. Look, I know Tiago seems like an ice sculpture come to life, but he wasn't always this way. Raphael's playfulness faded. Our father, he wasn't a good man. Successful, brilliant, everyone admired him. But at home, he was something else entirely. Isabella remembered the comment Kathleen had made about Tiago learning honesty from his father. What do you mean? Let's just say father believed that fear was the best motivator. He ran his company that way. He ran his family that way. Raphael stirred his coffee absently. Tiago got the worst of it. The oldest son, the heir, the one who had to be perfect. Every mistake had consequences, physical ones. The image of young Tiago from the photograph flashed through Isabella's mind. The black eye, the forced smile. Mother never stopped it. She believed father was making Tiago strong, teaching him to survive in a ruthless world. Raphael's voice hardened. All he really taught him was that love hurts, that caring about people makes you vulnerable, that emotions are weaknesses to be eliminated. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry for him. He wouldn't want that. I'm just saying, if he seems cold, it's because warmth was beaten out of him before he could learn what it felt like. They finished their coffee, and Raphael drove her back to the mansion. As they pulled up, he touched her arm gently. Hey, whatever happens, remember, you married Tiago, not our father's ghost. There's a difference, even if he's forgotten. That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. She wandered the mansion's halls, exploring rooms that looked like museum exhibits. No warmth, no personality, no sign that actual humans lived here. She found herself in a library that took up an entire floor. Books lined every wall, thousands of them, organized with obsessive precision. Tiago sat in a corner, reading by lamplight, still wearing the same clothes from dinner. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his face. Can't sleep. This house is too quiet. You'll get used to it. Isabella moved along the shelves, reading titles, architecture, design, engineering, books about building things. You have quite a collection. I like structures that make sense. Buildings have logic. People don't. Is that why you collect books you never read? Who says I never read them? Raphael mentioned you're never home long enough to read anything. Raphael talks too much. Isabella pulled a book from the shelf at random. Poetry. She opened it, saw annotations in the margins, proof of careful reading. You did read this one a long time ago. Why poetry? It doesn't seem like your thing. It's not, but he'd read it carefully enough to fill the margins with notes. Isabella read one aloud. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. Tiago stood abruptly. It's late. Did I hit a nerve? No, I just prefer my privacy. But as he walked past her, Isabella saw something in his expression. Not anger, something softer, more painful. Like she'd touched a wound he'd convinced himself had healed. Tiago. He stopped but didn't turn around. Raphael told me about your father. His shoulders tensed. Raphael shouldn't have done that. Maybe not. But now I understand something. What's that? Why you think contracts are safer than connections. He turned then, and his eyes held more emotion than she'd seen since meeting him. Anger, yes, but underneath it, something that looked like fear. Contracts have terms. Connections have consequences. I prefer clarity. That's a lonely way to live. Lonely is safe. They stood in the library, surrounded by thousands of words written about love and loss and human connection. And Isabella saw him clearly for the first time. Not a cold billionaire who bought solutions to problems. A man so afraid of being hurt that he'd built a fortress around his heart and convinced himself it was strength rather than prison. Good night, Tiago. Good night, Isabella. She left him standing among his books, and as she climbed the stairs to her isolated wing, Isabella realized the year ahead would be harder than she'd imagined, because it's easy to hate someone who's cruel. It's much harder to watch someone suffocate behind walls they've built from their own pain. Chapter 4, Living Among Wolves. The luncheon Catline hosted was exactly as terrible as Isabella had anticipated. 20 women gathered in a garden that looked like something from a magazine spread. Perfectly manicured hedges, flowers arranged with artistic precision, tables set with china that probably cost more than most people's cars. Everything beautiful and utterly lifeless. Isabella wore a dress Ingrid had laid out for her. Pale blue, expensive, appropriate. Another costume for another performance. The women descended on her like elegant predators. Their smiles were bright. Their eyes were calculating. Every question felt like a trap wrapped in politeness. Isabella, darling, you must tell us how you met Tiago. Such a whirlwind romance. How exciting. You must have quite the story. Isabella had practiced the lies with Tiago the night before. They'd sat in his study, creating a fiction that would pass scrutiny. Coffee shop meet cute. Instant connection. The kind of romance people wanted to believe in, even when they knew better. She delivered the lines perfectly. The women listened with expressions that said they didn't believe a word, but were too polite to say so directly. Catline watched from across the garden, sipping tea, saying nothing. Her silence felt more dangerous than the others' questions. You must be so overwhelmed, one woman said. Moving into such a large house, becoming part of such an established family. It's quite a leap from your previous circumstances. A polite way of saying poverty. I'm adjusting. I'm sure you are. Though I imagine the learning curve is steep. So many unwritten rules in society. So many ways to make mistakes when you're not raised in this world. Isabella smiled sweetly. Fortunately, kindness translates across all social classes. I found that treating people with respect works everywhere. The subtle rebuke landed. The woman's smile tightened. Another woman jumped in, eager to score her own points. We were just saying how surprising it is that Tiago married. He's always been so dedicated to work. We wondered if perhaps, well, there might be other reasons for such a rushed wedding. The implication was clear. They thought she was pregnant. No other reasons. Just two people who decided not to wait. How modern, though some might say impulsive. I prefer to think of it as decisive. The verbal sparring continued through lunch. Every course brought new questions disguised as conversation. Where had she gone to school? What did her family do? What were her interests? Each answer revealing her unsuitability, her lack of proper background, her fundamental wrongness for this world. Isabella endured it all with grace that surprised even herself. She didn't shrink. She didn't apologize for her past. She met each subtle insult with calm dignity, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Catline finally spoke toward the end of lunch. Isabella has such composure. It's remarkable for someone so unused to scrutiny. Thank you, Isabella said, though it clearly wasn't meant as a compliment. I only hope she understands what she's taken on. Being a Jace comes with certain expectations, certain responsibilities. I'm learning. Are you? Kathleen set down her teacup with precision. Because it seems to me you're still playing dress-up. Wearing the right clothes, saying the right words, but not truly understanding what any of it means. The garden went quiet. The other women leaned in, sensing blood. Isabella met Kathleen's gaze steadily. You're right. I don't understand this world. I don't understand people who measure worth in money and connections. I don't understand cruelty disguised as etiquette. I don't understand how you can sit in a garden this beautiful and still find ways to make everything ugly. Catline's eyes flashed. Careful, dear. You're speaking to your husband's mother. I'm speaking to someone who seems determined to hate me, regardless of what I do. So forgive me if I've stopped trying to earn approval I'll never receive. Isabella stood, placing her napkin on the table. Thank you for lunch. It's been illuminating. She walked away, heart pounding, expecting Kathleen to call her back to deliver some devastating final blow. But silence followed her across the garden. Only when she reached her car, Tiago's car, the driver waiting patiently, did she allow herself to shake. That evening, Tiago found her in her room. She'd changed into comfortable clothes and was attempting to read, though the words kept blurring. "My mother called. I'm sure she did. She said you were disrespectful." Isabella closed her book. "Is that what you think? I think you walked away from a luncheon where you were supposed to make a good impression. I was supposed to sit there while 20 women treated me like entertainment, while your mother made it clear I'll never be good enough. You knew what you were signing up for, did I? Because the contract didn't mention being crucified at garden parties." Tiago moved into the room, and Isabella noticed he looked exhausted. "My family's difficult. That's an understatement. But they're still my family, and I'm your wife, supposedly. Doesn't that count for something? This isn't a real marriage." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. They both knew it was true, but hearing it spoken aloud felt different, harsher. "Then why does it matter what your mother thinks of me?" "Because people are watching. If she believes this isn't real, others will too. The will can be challenged. So I'm supposed to let myself be humiliated for the sake of your inheritance? You're being compensated handsomely for your troubles." Isabella stood, anger finally breaking through her control. "You think money fixes everything, don't you? You think because you're paying me, I have to accept whatever treatment your family dishes out. That's not what I'm not your employee, Tiago. I'm not your servant. I'm a human being who deserves basic respect, contract or not. You think I don't know that? I think you forget. I think you're so used to seeing people as transactions that you've forgotten they have feelings." He flinched like she'd struck him. "You don't know anything about me. Then tell me. Tell me why you're so comfortable treating people like chess pieces. Because chess pieces can't hurt you." The words exploded from him with shocking intensity. Tiago looked as surprised as Isabella felt, as if he hadn't meant to say something so honest. The silence that followed felt delicate, like spun glass that might shatter if either of them moved. "Your father," Isabella said quietly, "he hurt you. And you decided never to let anyone close enough to do it again. Don't psychoanalyze me. I'm not. I'm just seeing you. Well, stop. I don't need to be seen." But the way he said it made Isabella think he was lying. That maybe being seen was exactly what he needed and exactly what he feared most. He left without another word, and Isabella sat in her beautiful cage, wondering how two people could be married and still be completely alone. The next morning, she woke to find an envelope slipped under her door. Inside, a note in precise handwriting. "The shelter you volunteer at needs building repairs. I've arranged for a construction crew to handle it." Not an apology, just practical. Isabella stared at the note for a long time. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even particularly kind, but it was something, acknowledgement maybe, of her work, of her interests, of her as a person beyond their contract. She tucked the note into her drawer and tried not to think about what it meant that such a small gesture could affect her so much. The days developed a rhythm. Tiago left for work before dawn. Isabella filled her time with volunteer work, avoiding the mansion as much as possible. They attended necessary events together. Dinners, fundraisers, appearances where they smiled and touched and performed the fiction of their marriage. In private, they maintained careful distance. Polite but not friendly, civil but not warm. It should have been easier that way. Isabella told herself it was what she wanted. But sometimes, late at night when she couldn't sleep, she found herself wondering what would happen if they stopped performing, if they allowed themselves to be honest about the strange space they occupied. Not strangers anymore, but not truly together either. One evening, she found Tiago in the library again. This was becoming a pattern, Isabella gravitating toward the only room in the mansion that felt lived in. Tiago retreating there when work became too much. "You're here again," he said without looking up from his book. "Is that a problem?" "No, just an observation." Isabella settled into a chair across from him. Can I ask you something? That depends on the question. Why architecture? Raphael said you studied design before taking over the family business. Tiago closed his book slowly. That was a long time ago, but you loved it. I can tell by the books you keep. Love is irrelevant. Responsibility matters. That's not an answer. He looked at her then, really looked at her, like he was trying to decide whether honesty was worth the risk. Buildings made sense to me. You could design something beautiful and functional. Every line had purpose. Every space had meaning. It was the only thing in my life that felt completely under my control. What stopped you? My father died. The company needed a leader. I was the heir. You gave up what you loved. I did what was necessary. Isabella thought about her own sacrifices, her own compromises. We have that in common. What's that? Giving up what we wanted for what we had to do. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe. The acknowledgement that they weren't as different as they pretended to be. The difference is you still care about what you gave up. I've learned not to. Have you? Or have you just convinced yourself that not caring is the same as not hurting? He stood abruptly. I should get back to work. It's almost midnight. Work doesn't keep business hours. He was running. Isabella could see it clearly now. Every time a conversation got too real, too honest, too close to something that mattered, he retreated. Tiago, she called as he reached the door. Thank you. For the shelter repairs. He paused but didn't turn around. It was practical. The building needed work. Still, thank you. He left without responding, but Isabella could have sworn she saw his shoulders relax slightly at her words. Small moments, small gestures, small cracks in the walls they'd both built. Isabella told herself it didn't mean anything, that she was reading too much into basic human decency from a man who'd bought her presents like he'd buy a service. But late that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling of her expensive prison, she couldn't quite convince herself it was true. Something was changing. Between them, around them, inside both of them, and that terrified her more than anything else. Chapter 5. Cracks in the Armor. Isabella's mother came home on a Thursday that felt like spring had arrived early. The experimental treatment had worked its miracle. Not cured, the doctors were careful with that word, but remission, which in their world meant everything. Isabella stood in the hospital parking lot, watching her mother breathe air outside those walls for the first time in months, and felt something crack open in her chest. Hope, maybe, or relief so profound it felt like pain. Baby girl, stop crying. People will think I'm dying. Happy tears. Mama, only happy tears. Amara wrapped her arms around both of them, and for a moment the three of them stood. They're holding each other like they were the only people in the world. Tiago had arranged for a nurse to stay at their new apartment. He'd moved them from the crumbling building to something safer months ago. Another one of his practical gestures. Isabella hadn't fought it. Pride had limits when your family's safety was involved. Will you come in? Her mother asked. Stay for dinner? Isabella glanced at her phone. I should get back to that big empty house with that lonely man. Baby, you're married. You should be having dinner together. It's not that kind of marriage, Mama. Her mother's knowing look said she understood more than Isabella wanted her to. Every marriage is exactly what you make it. Remember that. The drive back to the mansion took longer than usual. Traffic had snarled. Something about an accident on the main highway. Isabella sat in the back of the car, watching the city crawl past, thinking about her mother's words. Every marriage is what you make it. But what could she make from a contract? From separate bedrooms and careful distance and two people who'd agreed never to get close. She arrived home. When had she started thinking of it as home? To find Tiago's car already in the drive. Unusual. He normally worked until late evening. Ingrid met her at the door, her expression concerned. Mrs. Jace, Mr. Jace came home early. He's in his study and asked not to be disturbed. Is something wrong? I wouldn't know. But he seemed upset. Isabella should have gone to her room. Their arrangement didn't include comforting each other. That wasn't part of the contract. Instead, she found herself walking to his study, knocking softly before opening the door. Tiago sat at his desk, staring at nothing, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand. He didn't look up when she entered. "I said I didn't want to be disturbed. What happened?" "Nothing that concerns you." But his voice was off, flat in a way that suggested he was using all his energy to keep it steady. Isabella moved closer. "Tiago, leave it alone, Isabella. Talk to me. Why? So you can pretend to care as part of your contract obligations." The words should have stung. Instead, they made her sad. "Is that really what you think?" He finally looked at her, and his eyes held something she'd never seen before. Defeat. "I think you're here because you signed papers promising to be. I think neither of us should pretend this is anything more than it is. What happened today?" He took a drink, set the glass down with deliberate care. "The company is being challenged. My uncle has filed multiple lawsuits claiming the will was improperly executed. He's arguing that our marriage is fraudulent and should be invalidated. Can he do that? He's doing it. Whether he succeeds depends on how well we've convinced people this is real." Isabella sank into the chair across from his desk. "And you think we haven't? I think people see what they want to see. And what they see is a desperate man who made a business arrangement to save his inheritance. Isn't that what happened?" His laugh was bitter. "Yes, which makes lying about it particularly challenging." They sat in silence, the weight of their situation settling over them like fog. "We could try harder," Isabella said quietly. "To make it look real? You mean perform better?" "I mean spend time together, actually talk, give people something to believe in. You hate being in this house. That's not the same as hating being around you." He looked startled by that admission. "Isn't it?" "No. You're difficult and emotionally constipated, and you treat human connection like a disease. But you're not cruel. And you've kept your word about everything in the contract." What a ringing endorsement. Despite everything, Isabella almost smiled. "I'm saying we could try. For the sake of the will. For the sake of keeping your uncle from winning." "What does that look like?" "I don't know. Dinner together? Actual conversations? Maybe even learning to like each other?" "That seems ambitious. You don't think we could?" Tiago studied her for a long moment. "I think you're more interesting than I expected, which is unfortunate." "Why unfortunate?" "Because interesting makes this harder." "Makes what harder?" "By keeping distance. Maintaining clarity about what this is and isn't." Isabella's heart did something complicated in her chest. "Maybe distance isn't working anyway. It has to work." "Why?" "Because the alternative is disaster." She wanted to ask what alternative he meant, what disaster he was avoiding. But Ingrid knocked on the door, announcing dinner was ready, and the moment shattered. They ate together that night, not at opposite ends of the table, but close enough to actually converse. Tiago told her about the legal challenges. Isabella told him about her mother's homecoming. They talked like two people who were at least trying to know each other. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile either. Progress, Isabella thought. Small, terrifying progress. The fundraiser 2 weeks later was the kind of event Isabella had learned to dread. Hundreds of people dressed in clothes worth more than most people earned in a year, pretending to care about causes they'd forget the moment they went home. This one was for children's literacy. Isabella actually cared about this cause, which made the performative nature of it all even harder to stomach. Tiago guided her through the crowd with his hand on her lower back, a casual gesture that looked natural but felt strange. They'd practiced this, the small touches that suggested intimacy, the glances that implied affection. From outside, they probably looked like any other couple. From inside, Isabella felt like she was acting in a play she hadn't memorized properly. "Smile," Tiago murmured. "You look like you're attending a funeral." "I'm trying. Try harder. People are watching." An elderly man approached, someone Tiago greeted with more warmth than Isabella had seen him show anyone. "Damon, good to see you." "Tiago. And this must be the wife I've heard so much about." Isabella recognized him from the wedding. The board member who'd said something about Tiago not smiling since his father stopped hitting him. "Isabella Joan. It's nice to see you again." Damon took her hand gently. "Walk with me a moment, dear." Let these people admire my ability to steal the prettiest woman at the party. Tiago looked uncertain. But Damon was already guiding Isabella toward the balcony. You're wondering why I pulled you away, Damon said once they were alone. The thought crossed my mind. I wanted to thank you. For what? For whatever you're doing to that boy. He's different lately, less rigid, more human. Isabella shook her head. I haven't done anything, haven't you? I've known Tiago since he was a child, watched his father destroy him piece by piece, watched him rebuild himself into something hard and untouchable. And now I watch him look at you when you're not paying attention, and I see cracks in that armor. You're seeing what you want to see. Am I? Or are you afraid to see it yourself? Before Isabella could respond, shouting erupted inside. They rushed back to find a commotion near the entrance. A drunk man was causing a scene, his voice carrying over the music. The great Tiago Jace bought himself a wife just like his daddy bought everything else. Security moved in, but the man pushed past them, stumbling toward Tiago. Tell them how you found some poor girl and offered her money to pretend to love you. The room had gone silent. Every person watching, every phone probably recording. Tiago's face could have been carved from marble. You're drunk. Leave before this gets worse. Worse. It's already worse. Your whole life is a performance. Your marriage is fake. Everyone knows it. The man lunged forward, grabbing Isabella's arm, pulling her toward him. How much did he pay you, sweetheart? How much to pretend to love a man his own mother can barely stand? Everything happened fast after that. Tiago moved like violence given form. One moment the man was gripping Isabella, the next he was on the floor. Tiago standing over him with an expression Isabella had never seen before. Pure rage, completely uncontrolled. Touch her again and I'll break every bone in your hand, Tiago said quietly, his voice more dangerous for its calm. Security pulled the man away. The crowd buzzed with excitement. Someone called for drinks to smooth over the awkwardness, but Isabella stood frozen, rubbing her arm where the man had grabbed her. Watching Tiago's hands shake as adrenaline drained away, he turned to her, and for a moment his mask completely dropped. She saw fear there, real genuine fear that she'd been hurt. Are you okay? I'm fine. He grabbed you hard. Let me see your arm. Tiago, I'm fine. But he was already gently pushing up her sleeve, checking for bruises, his touch so careful it made her throat tight. We should go, he said. This night is over. They didn't speak in the car. Tiago's jaw was clenched, his body rigid with tension. The driver took them through the city streets, navigation recalculating routes around traffic. Eventually they ended up on a highway, the traffic flowing smoothly until suddenly it wasn't. There's been an accident ahead, the driver said. I can take another route. Just wait it out, Tiago said. It's fine. They sat in stop traffic, silence thick between them. You didn't have to do that, Isabella said finally. Do what? Defend me. React like that. The contract doesn't require you to break someone's nose at events. I didn't break his nose. You wanted to. He didn't deny it. He shouldn't have touched you. I've dealt with worse. That doesn't make it acceptable. Traffic started moving again, slowly. The driver navigated around the accident scene. A car crumpled against a barrier, emergency vehicles everywhere. People could have recorded that, Isabella continued. Your reaction. It looked real. It was real. The admission hung between them. Why? Isabella asked. Why what? Why does it matter if someone grabs me? Why react like that when we both know this isn't real? Tiago stared out the window. Because regardless of the circumstances, you're still a person who deserves respect. The contract doesn't change that. Is that all it was? General respect for human dignity? What else would it be? Isabella wanted to push, to demand honesty, to ask why his hands had shaken when he checked her arm, why he'd looked at her with something that resembled genuine fear, but they were pulling into the mansion drive, and the moment was ending, and maybe some questions were better left unasked. That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the way Tiago had moved to defend her, the way he'd touched her arm with such careful concern, the way he'd looked at her like she mattered. She found herself walking to the library again, drawn there like it was the only safe space in the entire house. Tiago was there, of course. Always there, hiding among his books. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. Apparently not. Isabella sat in her usual chair. That man tonight. He said everyone knows our marriage is fake. Drunk talk. But what if he's right? What if we're not convincing anyone? Then we adjust. To what? We're already attending events together. We touch when appropriate. We smile in public. What else is there? Tiago was quiet for a long moment. Actual time together. Without cameras. Without audiences. Just learning to exist in the same space without it feeling forced. You mean like we're doing now? Yes. So we're already doing it. Apparently. Isabella pulled her feet up under her, getting comfortable. Tell me something real. What? Something real about you. Something that's not in your public biography or your contract clauses. Why? Because if we're going to convince people we're real, maybe we should actually know each other. He looked uncomfortable. I don't do personal revelations. Try. This is ridiculous. Humor me. Tiago sighed, closing his book. Fine. I hate running the company. Every day I do work that feels meaningless. I sit in meetings discussing profit margins when what I really want to do is design buildings that people actually need. Affordable housing, community centers, schools and neighborhoods that can't afford them. But that's not what billionaires do, so I don't do it either. Isabella felt her heart do that complicated thing again. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me. Don't get used to it. Your turn. Ask me something. I don't need to know anything about you. Ask anyway. He studied her face like he was trying to decide if this was a trap. Fine. Why volunteer at the shelter? Of all the causes you could choose, why that one? Because those women are where I could have been. One wrong turn, one bad choice, one stroke of terrible luck. My mother got sick, but I had skills to work. But what if I hadn't? What if I'd been younger, less educated, more vulnerable? I volunteer there because I understand that survival is sometimes just luck. And people who get lucky should help people who don't. Tiago was quiet. Then that's beautiful. It's practical. No, it's beautiful. You see people clearly and still choose to help them. Something in his tone made Isabella's chest tighten. We should do this more often. Talk. Be honest. Honesty is dangerous. Why? Because once you start, it's hard to stop. They sat in the library until dawn started filtering through the windows, just talking. Small revelations, tiny truths. Nothing earth-shattering, but everything meaningful. And when Isabella finally went to bed, as sunrise colored the sky, she realized something that made her heart race with panic. She was starting to like him, not tolerate, not coexist with, actually like, which meant she was in danger of breaking the one clause that mattered most. Chapter 6. When Lightning Strikes, the Hurricane. Warning started the same morning. Tiago announced they had to fly to the coast for a last-minute meeting, something about a development project that needed his approval. Details that Isabella only half absorbed because she was exhausted from another sleepless night. The weather looks bad, she said, checking her phone. We'll be back before it hits. Quick meeting, straight return, famous last words. Isabella would think later. They flew out on a small private plane, arriving at a coastal resort where developers had plans for luxury condos that would probably displace half the local community. Tiago spent hours in meetings while Isabella wandered the hotel, watching storm clouds gather like armies. By afternoon, the warnings had escalated. The airport closed. All flights grounded. Tiago found her in the hotel lobby, frustration etched into every line of his body. We're stuck here overnight. Maybe longer. How much longer? Depends on the storm. The hotel was preparing for impact, boarding windows, moving furniture, implementing emergency protocols. Guests who couldn't leave were being moved to interior rooms on middle floors. Isabella and Tiago ended up in a standard room that felt impossibly small after the mansion's vast spaces. One bed. She tried not to think about the significance. I'll sleep on the floor, Tiago said immediately. Don't be ridiculous. The bed is big enough. The contract didn't anticipate natural disasters. We're adults. We can share a bed without it meaning anything. But even as she said it, Isabella wondered if she was trying to convince him or herself. The storm hit at sunset. Wind screamed against the windows. Rain hammered like fists demanding entry. The power flickered, died, came back, died again for good. They sat in darkness, lit only by emergency lighting in the hallways, listening to the hotel shake around them. "I hate this," Isabella admitted. "Storms. Being helpless, not being able to do anything but wait. Welcome to my entire childhood." The comment was so unexpected that Isabella turned to look at him, though she could barely see his face in the darkness. "What do you mean?" "My father's moods were like weather. You never knew when they'd turn violent. You just waited and hoped you weren't in the path when they did. Tiago, you wanted honesty. There it is. I learned very young that some forces are too powerful to fight. You just endure them." Lightning flashed, illuminating his face for a moment. He looked younger in that brief light. "More vulnerable. That's not the same," Isabella said softly. "Weather is random. What your father did was a choice. Doesn't change the helplessness." They sat quietly, listening to chaos outside. "Tell me something good," Isabella said. "Something from before everything got complicated." "Like what?" "I don't know. A good memory. Something that made you happy." Tiago was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Then there was a summer when I was young. My father was traveling for work for months. It was just me and Raphael and my mother. We went to this beach house, and for 8 weeks, nobody hit anyone. Nobody screamed. We just existed peacefully. That made you happy. Just the absence of violence? You don't understand what a miracle that was." Isabella's heart ached for the child he'd been. "Tell me more." "Raphael and I built sandcastles, elaborate ones with moats and towers. We'd spend all day on them, and at night the tide would wash them away. The next morning we'd start again." "That sounds nice." "It was pointless. All that work for something that wouldn't last. Maybe the point wasn't the lasting. Maybe it was the building." He turned to look at her, though she could barely see him in the darkness. "Is that what you do? Build things you know won't last?" "Sometimes. The work at the shelter, those women move on. The kids I help, they grow up and leave. But the building part matters, even if it doesn't last forever. That seems exhausting. It's living. You should try it sometime." Lightning illuminated his expression again, and Isabella saw something that looked like longing. "I wouldn't know where to start." "Start with this. Right now. This conversation. It's building something, even if it only lasts tonight." The wind howled. The building groaned. They sat together in darkness, two people who'd agreed never to get close, suddenly closer than they'd ever been. "I was engaged once," Tiago said suddenly. Isabella hadn't expected that. "What happened?" "She left when she realized I couldn't give her what she needed." What did she need? Love, affection, basic human warmth. "I thought I could learn." She thought she could fix me. "We were both wrong." "When was this?" "Years ago. Before I learned that being alone was easier than disappointing people." "That's sad." "It's realistic." "No, it's sad. You convinced yourself you're incapable of connection, instead of finding someone who understands you." "And who would that be?" Isabella didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because something was happening in this dark room during this violent storm, something she didn't have words for yet. "Your turn," Tiago said. "Tell me something I don't know about you." "I wanted to be a teacher. Before everything happened with my mother, I was taking night classes, working toward a degree. I wanted to teach elementary school, help kids fall in love with learning. Why didn't you?" "Money, time, life getting in the way. The usual reasons people give up on dreams." "You could go back. After this year, maybe I will." "After this year." The phrase hung between them, heavy with meaning. After this year, they'd walk away from each other. The contract would end. They'd return to being strangers. The thought made Isabella's chest tight. "Tiago?" "Yes? Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd met differently? Without the contract? Just two random people at a coffee shop or something? I don't allow myself to wonder about alternate realities. But if you did..." He was quiet. "Then I think I would have noticed you. Probably been intimidated by you. And talked myself out of approaching, because women like you don't end up with men like me." "Women like me?" Real, genuine, capable of actual human emotion, Isabella's breath caught. You're capable of emotion, am I? Or have I just learned to simulate it well enough to pass? That's not the same thing, isn't it? Lightning flashed again, and in that brief illumination, Isabella saw his face clearly. The vulnerability there took her breath away. She moved closer without thinking. Not touching, but close enough that she could feel his warmth in the cold room. You feel things, she said. I've seen it. The way you defended me at that fundraiser. The way you look sometimes when you think no one is watching. You're not as empty as you pretend to be. Maybe I'm just a better actor than you give me credit for. I don't believe that. Why not? Because I'm looking at you right now and you're terrified. And you can't fake fear like this. His jaw clenched. I'm not afraid, liar. Isabella, what are you afraid of? He stood abruptly, moving to the window, even though the boards blocked any view. Conversations like this, moments where I forget what we agreed to. And what did we agree to? Distance, clarity, no confusion about what this is. What if I'm already confused? He turned back to her, and even in darkness, she felt the intensity of his gaze. Then you need to stop, because this ends badly if either of us forgets the rules. Maybe I don't care about the rules anymore. Isabella, maybe I'm tired of pretending this. Doesn't mean anything. It can't mean anything. The contract, forget the contract! I'm talking about two people stuck in a room during a hurricane, finally being honest with each other. He moved back toward her, and Isabella could feel the tension radiating from him. You want honesty? Yes, fine. I think about you constantly. I notice everything. What you eat, what you read, how you smile at everyone except me. I hate that I notice. I hate that I care. Because caring means being vulnerable, and vulnerable means getting destroyed. Isabella stood, moving close enough to see his face in the emergency lighting from the hallway. And if I said I was already vulnerable, then I'd say you should protect yourself better. From what? From this. From me. From whatever this is becoming. They were inches apart, breathing the same air, balanced on the edge of something neither of them knew how to name. Thunder shook the building. The lights flickered, and in that moment of chaos, something broke between them. Isabella didn't know who moved first. Maybe both of them, maybe neither. But suddenly, his hands were in her hair and hers were gripping his shirt, and they were kissing like drowning people searching for air. It wasn't gentle. It was months of tension and denial and loneliness, finally finding release. It was two people who'd agreed never to touch. Touching like they'd die if they stopped. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, the reality crashed over them. We can't, Tiago said. But he didn't let go. I know, the contract, I know. This changes everything, I know. They stood frozen, holding each other, neither willing to take the step back that would restore the distance they'd agreed to maintain. Finally, Tiago released her, moving away like it physically pained him. I'll sleep on the floor, Tiago, please. I need distance. I need to think. He grabbed a pillow and blanket. Setting up a makeshift bed as far from her as the small room allowed, they lay in darkness. The storm raging outside, a different kind of storm raging between them. Isabella didn't sleep. She doubted he did either, and when dawn finally came, gray and exhausted, everything had changed. The hurricane had passed, leaving damage in its wake. But the real damage was internal, because they'd crossed a line they'd sworn never to. Approach. And neither of them knew how to uncross it. Chapter 7. The accident that changes everything. The return to the mansion felt like returning to a crime scene. They'd broken the rules. Both of them knew it. Neither knew what came next. Tiago buried himself in work. Isabella threw herself into volunteer projects. They avoided each other with the skill of people who'd had practice avoiding difficult things their entire lives. But the memory of that kiss hung between them like smoke, impossible to ignore, impossible to clear away. 2 weeks after the hurricane, the legal battle with Tiago's uncle intensified. Depositions were scheduled, financial records were subpoenaed. Private investigators followed Isabella everywhere, looking for proof the marriage was fraudulent. They're going to interview everyone who knows you, Tiago's attorney warned. During a meeting Isabella sat through despite wanting to be anywhere else. They'll ask about your relationship, look for inconsistencies in your stories. We've been consistent, Tiago said. Have you? Because from what I'm hearing, you barely spend time together. Separate bedrooms, separate lives. That's not how newlyweds typically behave. We value our independence. The court will value evidence. And right now, the evidence suggests this is exactly what your uncle claims, a business arrangement. After the meeting, Kathleen appeared like a storm cloud, her expression darker than Isabella had ever seen. We need to talk. Privately. She led them to a sitting room that probably cost more than most houses, closing the door with ominous finality. This is your fault, she said, looking directly at Isabella. If you'd been more convincing, if you'd tried harder to fit in, we wouldn't be in this position. Mother, don't mother me, Tiago. I warned you this was a mistake. I told you marrying some nobody would come back to destroy everything. But you were so certain you could control the situation. I'm not a nobody, Isabella said quietly, aren't you? What exactly are you beyond someone my son hired to play a role? That's enough, Tiago said, his voice dangerous. Is it? Because I'm tired of watching you throw away your father's legacy for this farce. Either make this marriage look real, or end it and face the consequences. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you move into the same bedroom. Be seen together constantly. Give people something to believe in. Or admit this was all a lie, and prepare to lose everything. She left, and the silence she left behind felt suffocating. You don't have to do any of that, Tiago said. The contract doesn't require sharing a bedroom. Maybe she's right. Maybe we need to try harder. Or maybe this whole thing was doomed from the start. Isabella looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. You're giving up. I'm being realistic. No, you're being scared. Of what? Of the possibility that this might actually work. That we might actually be able to convince people because it's starting to become real. His expression shuttered. Don't do that. Do what? Confuse performance with reality. We kissed once, during a storm. It didn't mean anything. The lie sat between them, obvious and painful. If you say so, I do. Isabella nodded slowly. Fine. Then we'll do what your mother suggested. We'll perform better. Move me into your room. We'll be the perfect couple. Whatever it takes to win this case. Isabella, it's what you want, isn't it? To protect your inheritance. To beat your uncle. To prove you can control everything, even this. That's not fair. Fair? Nothing about this has been fair from the beginning. She walked out before he could respond. Before she said something she couldn't take back. That evening, she packed her belongings and moved them to the master bedroom. If they were going to perform, they'd perform completely. Tiago watched her unpack with an expression she couldn't read. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Your mother was right. Separate bedrooms look suspicious. We can say we're modern, that we don't subscribe to traditional sleeping arrangements, or we can share a room like married people and stop making this harder than it needs to be. She hung her clothes in the closet next to his, and the intimacy of it, her things mixed with his things, felt more real than anything else they'd done. That night, they lay in the same bed, a careful foot of space between them, both rigid with awareness. This is ridiculous. Isabella said to the ceiling, agreed. We're adults, supposedly. We can sleep in the same bed without it being weird. Absolutely, but neither of them slept. Isabella heard every breath he took, every small movement. The awareness was electric, impossible to ignore. Days passed in this strange new arrangement. They learned each other's routines, morning person versus night owl, coffee preferences, reading habits before sleep. All the small details that actual couples learned over time. And slowly, imperceptibly, the performance started feeling less like performance. The charity gala was the biggest event of the season. Everyone who mattered would be there, including Tiago's uncle, who'd made it clear he'd be watching their every interaction. Isabella wore a dress that cost more than her first car. Tiago wore a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a magazine. They looked perfect together. "Remember," he murmured as they entered, "we're in love. We're happy. We can't keep our hands off each other. Got it, fake love." I'm an expert by now, but his hand on her lower back didn't feel fake. The way he looked at her when he thought no one else was watching didn't look fake. The small protective gestures he made throughout the night, guiding her through crowds, bringing her drinks, staying close, none of it felt like performance. His uncle approached midway through the evening, a predator wearing a smile. "Tiago. And the lovely Isabella. How wonderful to see young love blooming, Uncle Marcus. You seem happy." "Genuinely happy. It's quite remarkable considering the circumstances of your marriage." "What circumstances?" Isabella asked, her voice sweet. "Oh, simply that it happened so quickly. One might wonder if there were motivations beyond romance." Tiago's hand tightened on her waist. "The only motivation was finding someone I couldn't live without." How poetic. "And you, my dear? What attracted you to my nephew?" Isabella looked at Tiago and something shifted inside her. Because looking at him now, she could answer honestly. His kindness when no one is watching. His tendency to fix things without taking credit. The way he notices small details about people. His wounded idealism hiding under layers of cynicism. His capacity to care even though he's convinced himself he can't. The words came out before she could stop them. True words. Honest words. Words that terrified her even as she spoke them. Tiago stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Marcus looked between them, his smile fading. "Well, that's quite the endorsement." He walked away, and Tiago pulled Isabella toward the balcony, away from crowds and listening ears. "What were you doing?" "What do you mean?" "That speech. That wasn't in the script. There is no script. You told me to make it look real, by inventing romantic feelings, not by—" He stopped, his expression torn. "Was any of that true?" Isabella's heart was racing. "Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters. Why? We kissed once, and you said it meant nothing. We're sharing a bed, and you maintain 3 feet of distance. You've made it very clear this is still just a contract, because if I don't maintain distance, I'll break the one rule that matters." "What rule?" "The one about not falling for you." The words exploded from him raw and unguarded. He looked as shocked as Isabella felt. The silence stretched. People were probably watching through the windows. Marcus was probably taking notes. Isabella didn't care. "Say that again." "No, Tiago, we should go. This night is over. Don't do this. Don't say something real and then run away." "I'm not running. I'm being practical. You're being terrified." Same thing. They left the gala early, the tension in the car thick enough to cut. Isabella stared out the window, mind racing. He was falling for her. He'd admitted it. And she couldn't finish the thought. The car navigated through city streets, following the route home. Traffic was light, the night quiet. Too quiet. They were crossing an intersection when Isabella saw the other car. Saw it running the red light. Saw it heading straight for them, too fast, inevitable. "Look out." Everything happened in slow motion and too fast simultaneously. The driver tried to swerve. Tires screamed. Metal crumpled. Isabella's body moved without thought. She threw herself across Tiago, shielding him as the impact hit. The world exploded in sound and pain and chaos. Then, nothing. Isabella woke in a hospital room, pain radiating through her entire body. "Cracked ribs," the doctor said. "Severe concussion. Bruising from the seatbelt and airbag. Lucky to be alive." Tiago sat beside her bed, still wearing his tuxedo, now rumpled and stained. His face was haggard, his eyes red-rimmed. "You're awake." "Apparently." "The doctor said you'll be okay. Nothing permanent." "That's good." They stared at each other, years of unspoken things hanging between them. "Why did you do that?" His voice broke. "Why did you throw yourself across me?" "Instinct. That's not instinct. That's—" He stopped, couldn't finish. "What?" "The contract didn't require you to protect me. It didn't require you to risk your life for mine." "I know." "Then why?" Isabella met his eyes, and suddenly she was done lying. Done performing. Done pretending. Because the thought of you getting hurt was worse than the thought of getting hurt myself. Because in that moment, nothing else mattered except making sure you were okay. She stopped. Couldn't say it. Tiago leaned forward, taking her hand with a gentleness that made her heart ache. Because you what? Because I broke the rule. The one we swore we'd never break. Isabella, I fell in love with you. Despite the contract. Despite my better judgment. Despite everything. I fell. Tears tracked down her face. And I know you're going to say this ends it. That the contract terminates. That I forfeit everything. But I don't care anymore. I just needed you to know. Tiago stood, still holding her hand, and she saw tears on his face too. I broke it first, he whispered. What? The rule. I broke it first. Probably that night in the storm. Maybe even before. I don't know when it happened. But I woke up one day and realized I wasn't performing anymore. That everything I felt was real. Hope and fear warred in Isabella's chest. What does that mean? I don't know. The contract. Forget the contract. We can't. There are legal implications, financial. I don't care about the money. I never did. Not really. Then what do you care about? Isabella looked at him, this broken, beautiful man who'd learned to armor his heart so completely, he'd forgotten it was still capable of beating. I care about you. The real you. The one who hides in libraries and dreams of building things that matter. The one who notices when I'm tired and leaves coffee where I'll find it. The one who's terrified of connection, but brave enough to try anyway. He kissed her then, gentle despite the hospital setting, despite the pain she was in, despite everything. When he pulled back, his voice was raw. I don't know how to do this. Be in love, be vulnerable, be anything except guarded. So we learned together. What if I hurt you? What if you don't? Isabella, life is risk, Tiago. Love is risk. But some things are worth the danger. He pressed his forehead to hers, and they stayed like that, just breathing together, until the nurse came to check Isabella's vitals. Later, when she'd fallen asleep, Tiago sat in the hospital chair and thought about contracts and clauses and all the ways he'd tried to control the uncontrollable. He'd failed spectacularly, and for the first time in his life, failure felt like grace. Chapter 8. Betrayal wrapped in truth. Isabella recovered at home, insisting she was fine despite the bruises that painted her body in violent colors. Tiago hovered like she might shatter, and she let him because his concern was one more truth they couldn't deny anymore. But the legal battle wasn't finished, and reality had a way of intruding on even the most genuine moments. The depositions continued. The investigations intensified, and through it all, Isabella and Tiago were forced to maintain their charade, even though it had stopped being a charade months ago. We need to prove the marriage is real, Lawrence Petit said during yet another meeting. The court has agreed to a final hearing. If we can demonstrate genuine marital connection, your uncle's challenge fails. And if we can't, then he wins. The company goes to him. Everything your father built gets dismantled. After the meeting, Isabella found Tiago in the library, staring at nothing. We'll figure it out, she said. Will we? Because it seems like the truth is the one thing we can't use. What do you mean? The truth is we started as a contract. The truth is you married me for money. Those facts don't change just because our feelings did. But our feelings did change. That has to count for something. He looked at her with exhaustion that went bone deep. Does it? Or does it just make us both fools? Isabella sat beside him, taking his hand. Then we're fools together. Days passed in a strange limbo. They were genuinely together now. No more careful distance, no more separate emotional lives. They talked until dawn. They learned each other's wounds and hopes and fears. They fell deeper into something neither could name, but both recognized as real. But the specter of the contract haunted everything. One afternoon, Isabella walked past Tiago's study and heard him on the phone with his attorney. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but his voice carried through the half-open door. "I understand the timeline. 9 months down, 3 to go. Have you prepared all the necessary annulment documents?" Isabella froze. "Yes, I want everything ready when the time comes. I need this handled efficiently." Her heart stopped beating. Annulment, efficient handling, when the time comes. She backed away slowly, her world tilting. Had she misunderstood everything? All the soft moments, the vulnerable confessions, the growing connection. Had it still been performance? That night at dinner, she studied Tiago like she'd never seen him before. He smiled at her. He told her about his day. He acted exactly like someone falling in love. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing her quiet. "Fine, just tired. Still recovering. You should rest more." His concern felt like knives, because how could he care about her recovery while planning their ending? Days passed. Isabella couldn't bring herself to confront him, partly from fear of confirmation, partly from not knowing what to do with the answer. She threw herself into work at the shelter, helping other women rebuild their lives while her own fell apart. Amara visited, her young face creased with concern. "What's wrong? You seem sad." "I'm okay." "You're lying. You always bite your lip when you lie." Isabella smiled despite everything. "When did you get so observant? I've been watching you my whole life. You think I don't notice when something's breaking you? It's complicated. Is it him? Did he hurt you?" "Not intentionally. That's the worst part." Amara sat beside her, taking her hand. "Talk to me." So Isabella told her everything. The contract, the feelings, the overhead conversation, all of it spilling out like a dam breaking. "Maybe you misunderstood," Amara said. "Maybe there's an explanation. Or maybe he's exactly what I knew he was from the beginning. Someone who sees relationships as transactions." "I don't believe that. I've seen how he looks at you. People can look however they want. Actions are what matter." "Then ask him. Don't just assume." But Isabella couldn't. Asking meant risking confirmation. As long as she didn't know for certain, she could still pretend. Hope was dangerous, but uncertainty was worse. A week before their contract would officially have 3 months remaining, Catline hosted another gathering. Smaller this time, just immediate family and a few close associates, but everyone who could witness whether their marriage looked real. Isabella went through the motions, smiled at the right times, let Tiago touch her waist, her hand, her shoulder, performed affection that had stopped being performance months ago. Raphael pulled her aside while Tiago was distracted with guests. "You look miserable." "I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. What's wrong?" Isabella almost told him, but what would she say? That she'd overheard something that suggested everything was still just business? That she'd fallen in love with someone who might be counting down the days until he could file annulment papers? "Nothing's wrong." Raphael studied her face. "He loves you. You know that, right?" "Does he?" "I've known my brother his entire life. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Never seen him laugh like he does when you're around. You changed something in him. Or maybe I just played my role well enough to convince everyone, including myself. That's not—" "Raphael, please, I can't do this right now." She walked away before he could push further, finding refuge in the bathroom where she could breathe without an audience. When she emerged, she overheard Catline talking to another woman in hushed tones that carried anyway. The whole thing has been fascinating to watch. Tiago trying so desperately to save the company, the girl playing her part remarkably well. "You really think it's fake?" "Darling, I know it's fake. Tiago told me himself months ago, a business arrangement. He was quite clear. He's just better at pretending than I expected." Isabella leaned against the wall, the confirmation landing like a physical blow. She walked back into the gathering on autopilot. Tiago smiled when he saw her, and she wanted to scream. How dare he smile like that when this was all still just performance to him? That night, back at the mansion, she finally confronted him. "When were you going to tell me?" "Tell you what?" about the annulment papers, about still planning to end this the moment the contract is up. His expression shuddered. You overheard something? Yes. And then I heard your mother confirming it was all still fake. All still business. Isabella, was any of it real, or are you just a better actor than I gave you credit for? It's not that simple, isn't it? Either you meant what you said in the hospital, or you didn't. Which is it? He ran his hand through his hair, agitation written in every line of his body. The contract exists. It has terms. I need to be prepared for all possibilities. That's not an answer. What do you want me to say? The truth. For once, just give me the truth. The truth is, I don't know. I don't know how to separate what's real from what we agreed to. I don't know how to trust that this isn't just us convincing ourselves because it's convenient. Isabella felt something crack inside her. Convenient. Right. That's not what I meant, isn't it? You think I'm confused, that I've mistaken proximity for connection. That would make sense to you because you don't believe real connection exists. That's not fair. None of this is fair. I fell in love with you, genuinely, terrifyingly, completely, and you're still treating this like a business problem with multiple possible solutions. Because I don't know how to be what you need. I need you to be honest. I need you to decide if this is real or if I'm still just your contracted wife. They stood in his study, both breathing hard, everything they'd been avoiding finally exploding between them. I can't do this anymore, Isabella said quietly. What does that mean? It means I'm tired of wondering, tired of trying to decode your feelings. Tired of being caught between a contract and whatever this has become. So what are you saying? I'm saying maybe your mother was right from the beginning. Maybe this was doomed from the start. Maybe you can't build real love on a foundation of lies, Isabella. I need time, space. I need to figure out if I'm staying because I love you or because I'm trapped by a contract that pays too well to walk away from. You think you're trapped? Aren't I? What happens if I leave now? I lose everything. My mother's treatment, my sister's future, all of it gone. You think I'd do that to you? I think the contract is clear, and you've always been very good at honoring contracts. She walked toward the door, then stopped. When the year is up, we're done. No extensions, no negotiations. You file your annulment papers. I take my money and disappear. We both get what we originally agreed to. Is that really what you want? Isabella looked at him. This man she'd fallen for despite every promise she'd made to herself. What I want doesn't matter. It never did. This was always a transaction. I just forgot for a while. She left him standing in his study, and even though she was the one walking away, she felt like she'd been abandoned. The next weeks passed in terrible silence. They slept in the same bed but didn't touch. They appeared together at required events but didn't talk. They existed in the same space, like ghosts of what they'd almost been. Isabella made plans. She'd finish the contract, take her money, start the life she'd been putting on hold, a life without Tiago. The thought should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like death. Chapter 9. The Exit Strategy. The final month arrived like a storm everyone could see coming but nobody wanted to face. Isabella's mother had been in remission for weeks now, strong enough to walk, to cook, to return to some semblance of normal life. The experimental treatment had performed its miracle. Her family was safe, which meant Isabella had no more excuses to stay. The trust fund was established. Amara's education was secured. The women's shelter had been renovated and expanded with the charitable money Tiago had provided. Everything Isabella had sold. Herself, 4 had been delivered. Now came the price of leaving. She began building her exit quietly. The way you'd plan an escape from a place that had become both home and prison. Small steps. Looking at apartments in neighborhoods far from the mansion. Researching teaching programs she could finally pursue. Planning a life that didn't include waking up beside someone who'd learned to build walls faster than she could break them down. Tiago noticed, but said nothing. He'd retreated completely after their fight, becoming the cold stranger she'd first met. Maybe that was easier for him. Maybe returning to ice was simpler than staying vulnerable. They attended the final court hearing 3 weeks before their contract would officially expire. The judge examined evidence, heard testimony, asked pointed questions about the nature of their marriage. Isabella and Tiago testified together, telling the story they'd perfected. The connection, the love, the genuine partnership, all of it true now. All of it meaningless because truth had come too late. The judge ruled in their favor. The marriage was deemed legitimate. Tiago's uncle's challenge was dismissed. The company remained secure. They'd won. Isabella felt nothing except relief that the performance could finally end. That night, there was no celebration. Tiago went to his office. Isabella went to her volunteer work. They moved around each other like satellites in degrading orbits, each revolution bringing them closer to inevitable collision. A week later, Isabella sat with her mother in the small apartment Tiago had bought for her family. Clean, safe, in a neighborhood where Amara could walk to school without fear. "Another promise kept. You're leaving him," her mother said. "Not a question. The contract is almost up." "That's not what I asked." Isabella stared at her hands, at the ring that had felt like a shackle and somehow became precious. "I can't stay somewhere I'm not really wanted. Have you asked him what he wants?" "I heard him planning our annulment months ago. I heard your mother confirm he still saw this as fake." "And you believed her?" "She's his mother. Why would she lie?" "Baby girl, that woman has been breaking that boy since he was born. Why would you trust her word over your own eyes?" "Because my eyes showed me what I wanted to see. The contract was always clear. 1 year. Then freedom." Her mother took her hand. "Freedom from what? From someone who loves you?" "He doesn't love me, doesn't he? Or are you just too scared to believe he does?" Isabella pulled away. "This isn't about fear. It's always about fear. You're terrified that if you stay, if you really commit to this, he'll eventually realize you're not enough and leave. So you're leaving first. Protecting yourself by destroying the thing you most want to keep. That's not, it is. I know you, baby. You've been protecting yourself your whole life. Since your father left. Since you had to grow up too fast. Since you learned that depending on people means risking disappointment." Tears burned Isabella's eyes. "What if you're wrong? What if I stay and he really doesn't want me? Then you'll survive. Like you've survived everything else. But at least you'll know you were brave enough to try." Isabella left her mother's apartment with those words echoing in her mind. But bravery felt impossible when every interaction with Tiago confirmed the distance between them. 2 weeks before the contract's end, she made her final decision. She would leave early, not wait for the official expiration. Just pack her things and disappear before the ending became even more painful than it already was. She chose a morning when Tiago left early for meetings, packed the single suitcase she'd arrived with. Everything else had been provided by him, and she wanted none of it. She wrote a letter because speaking the words felt impossible. "Tiago, I'm leaving before the contract ends because staying has become unbearable. Not because you've been cruel, you haven't, but because loving someone who can't love you back is the slowest form of dying I've ever experienced. I broke the clause. I fell in love. You were honest about what you could offer, and I convinced myself I could accept it. I was wrong. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Don't look for me. Don't try to contact me. The money has been transferred to the accounts we agreed on. Your legal obligations are fulfilled. Mine are too. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I hope you learn that walls built for protection eventually become prisons. I hope someone breaks through them. Before you forget there's anything worth protecting inside. It was fake for you, but it was real for me. Every moment, every touch, every conversation that mattered, all of it was real. Thank you for giving my family a future. I wish I could have given you one too, Isabella." She placed the letter on her pillow, left the ring on top of it, and walked out of the mansion at dawn. Raphael found Tiago that evening, sitting on the floor of the bedroom he'd shared with Isabella, holding her letter. The ring clenched in his other hand. "She left," Tiago said, his voice hollow. "I heard. I lost her, did you? Or did you push her away because you were too scared to fight for her?" Tiago looked at his brother with eyes that had finally learned to feel and were now drowning in it. "She thinks I never loved her because you never told her you did. You prepared annulment papers. You maintained distance. You gave her every reason to believe this was still just a contract to you. I was protecting both of us from disaster. How'd that work out? Tiago read the letter again, her words cutting deeper each time. She said it was real for her. It was real for you too. Everyone could see it except apparently the two people involved. What do I do? You go after her, she said not to. Since when do you follow instructions? You're Tiago Jace. You built an empire. You can't find one woman you're in love with? What if she doesn't want to be found? Then you convince her. You spent a year proving you could fake a marriage. Try spending 1 minute proving your love is real. But Tiago sat there holding her letter, paralyzed by fear that he was too late. That he'd destroyed the best thing that had ever happened to him by being exactly what his father had made him. Someone who confused control with safety and loneliness with strength. Days passed into weeks. Tiago searched but couldn't find her. She disappeared completely, like she'd never existed. His mother visited, found him working late in his study, looking like he hadn't slept in days. So she left. I told you this would end badly. You told me a lot of things. Most of them designed to make sure I stayed exactly as broken as you and father made me. Catline's expression hardened. Careful. No, I'm done being careful. You wanted me to fail at this. You wanted to prove that I'm incapable of real connection, because if I could love someone, it would mean you and father failed at breaking me completely. That's absurd, is it? You spent my entire childhood watching him hurt me and doing nothing. And when I finally found someone who saw past all that damage, you did everything you could to drive her away. I was protecting the family legacy. You were protecting your worldview, because if love actually exists, if people can heal, if connection matters more than power, then what does that say about the choices you made? About the son you let be destroyed? Kathleen stood, her composure cracking. I did what I thought was necessary. So did I, and we were both wrong. After she left, Tiago opened his laptop and searched again. Social media, public records, anything, nothing. Isabella had vanished like smoke. Months dragged by. The company ran smoothly. The legal victory stood. Everything Tiago had fought to protect was secure, and he'd never felt emptier in his entire life. He started volunteering at the women's shelter she'd loved, trying to understand what had drawn her there. The women recognized him from photos, treated him with caution at first, then with something like pity when they realized he was searching for someone who didn't want to be found. One day, Raphael burst into his office with a tablet. I found her. Tiago's heart stopped. Where? Colombia. Small village in the mountains. She's been building schools, homes, community centers, using the money from the contract to help people who have nothing. Raphael turned the tablet to show a news article. A photo of Isabella surrounded by children. Her smile genuine and radiant and more beautiful than Tiago remembered. She looks happy. She looks like she's found purpose. Good. She deserves that. You're not going after her. She left for a reason. I need to respect that. Or you're still too scared to fight for what you want. Tiago stared at the photo, memorizing her face. What if I go there and she tells me to leave? What if I'm too late? What if you're not? What if she's been waiting for you to be brave enough to show up? That night, Tiago made a decision that terrified him more than any business deal ever had. He booked a flight to Colombia, packed a bag, and prepared to do something he'd never done in his entire life. Fight for love instead of running from it. But as he stood at the airport, boarding pass in hand, fear paralyzed him. What would he say? What could he offer her that she didn't already have? He almost turned back. Then he remembered her letter. It was real for me. If she'd been brave enough to love him despite everything, he could be brave enough to go prove he loved her too, even if he was too late, even if she said no, even if he had to spend the rest of his life knowing he'd tried and failed, because trying and failing was better than never trying at all. Chapter Bateos. 10. Where love finds its courage. The village clung to mountainsides like it had grown there organically. houses painted in colors that defied the poverty surrounding them. Isabella had been here 8 months, building something that felt more real than anything in her previous life. She rose before dawn, worked until sunset, fell into bed exhausted. The children called her Mama Isabella. The villagers had stopped seeing her as an outsider. This was home now, except it wasn't, not really. Because home had started feeling like a person instead of a place. And that person was thousands of miles away, probably relieved she'd left. She was reviewing construction plans for the new school when Luce, the smallest of her adopted tribe of children, tugged her sleeve. Mama Isabella, there's a stranger watching you. What stranger? A man. He's been coming to the worksite every day. He doesn't talk to anyone, just watches. Isabella's heart did something painful, but she pushed the hope down. Lots of men visited the construction sites. Donors, volunteers, curious locals. It's fine, baby. Go play. But that evening, as she walked home through dusty streets, she saw him. Tiago stood beside the half-built school, wearing jeans and a work shirt, looking completely out of place and somehow exactly where he belonged. Isabella stopped walking. Her heart was racing, her hands shaking, every instinct screaming at her to run. "You came," she said, hating how small her voice sounded. "I've been here 2 weeks, working on the construction crew. They don't know who I am. Why? Because I needed to see your life, understand what you're building. Before I showed up and asked you to walk away from it." Thunder rumbled in the distance. Storm clouds gathered like they'd been waiting for this moment. "I'm not walking away from this, I know. I'm not asking you to." Rain started, fat drops that turned quickly into a downpour. Neither of them moved. "What are you asking, Tiago?" He stepped closer, rain soaking through his clothes, his careful composure washing away. "I'm asking you to forgive me for being too scared to fight for you when it mattered. I don't understand. The annulment papers, I had them prepared because I was terrified. Because loving you meant being vulnerable. And vulnerable meant risking the kind of pain I'd spent my entire life avoiding. So you prepared an exit strategy." "Yes. And it was the most cowardly thing I've ever done." Isabella wanted to stay angry, to protect herself, but the rawness in his voice was breaking her defenses. "Your mother said you told her it was all fake." "My mother has been trying to destroy any chance I had at happiness since I was born." She was lying, or I gave her enough ambiguity that she could believe the lie. "I don't know anymore. All I know is I wasted months we could have been together because I was too broken to trust what we had." The rain intensified. Isabella's hair plastered to her face, tears mixing with water. "You hurt me. I know. I gave you everything. My heart, my trust, my honesty. And you kept planning our ending. I was wrong. I've been wrong about everything except one thing. I love you. I've loved you since you yelled at me in a hospital cafeteria. I've loved you through every day we spent pretending. I love you now, standing in the rain, begging you to give me another chance I don't deserve. Love isn't enough. Not when you can't trust it. Not when you're always planning the exit. You're right. Which is why I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking if I can stay here." Isabella stared at him. "What? I donated the entire inheritance. The company, the money, everything except what I need to survive. It's going to affordable housing projects, community centers, schools in places like this. I'm done building empires. I want to build things that matter. Tiago, I don't expect you to take me back. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to be near you, even if it's as a co-worker you barely speak to. I want to spend my life proving I'm not the man who let you walk away." He dropped to his knees in the mud, rain pounding down, and Isabella saw him completely stripped of pretense for the first time. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be good at love. But I'm here on my knees in a storm again, and this time I'm not asking you to teach me. I'm just asking for the chance to learn." Children started gathering, drawn by the spectacle. Amara emerged from one of the houses. She'd been visiting for weeks, helping with the projects, and grabbed Isabella's hand. "He built the school foundation," Amara whispered. "The workers told me. He's been here every day at dawn, doing manual labor, never complaining. He's been sleeping in a tent at the edge of the village. Isabella looked at Tiago, this man who'd had everything and given it all away. "Stand up," she said quietly. "Isabella, stand up. If you're going to do this, do it on your feet. I don't want your guilt or your penance. I want your partnership." He stood slowly, rain washing the mud from his clothes, his eyes holding hers with desperate hope. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "I'm terrified I'll mess this up, that I'm too damaged to make you happy." That Isabella kissed him, stopping the words, stopping the fear, stopping everything except the feeling of coming home. When they pulled apart, both crying, both soaked, both trembling, she whispered against his mouth, "I'm terrified too. Love is terrifying. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you." The children erupted in cheers. Luz ran up and hugged both of them. "Does this mean he's staying, Mama Isabella?" Isabella looked at Tiago. "Is that what this means? If you'll have me, not as your husband by contract, but as your partner by choice. No separate bedrooms. Never again. No planning exits. The only plan I have is staying. No more walls. Only the ones we're building for people who need homes." Isabella smiled through tears. "Then yes, you can stay, on one condition. Anything. We do this right. No contracts. No clauses, no terms. Just two broken people choosing each other every single day. I can do that. I want to do that." They stood in the rain holding each other as the village gathered around them. Someone started playing music. Children danced in puddles. And for the first time in his life, Tiago understood what home actually meant. Not a place, not a structure, but a person who saw all your damage and chose to love you anyway. Weeks passed. They worked side by side, building schools and homes and futures for people who'd been forgotten. They talked through every fear, every wound, every moment of doubt. They learned each other slowly, properly, without contracts dictating terms. One evening, watching sunset paint the mountains gold, Tiago pulled a ring from his pocket. "Simple. Nothing like the diamond from their contract. Before you panic, I'm not proposing. Technically, we're still married. Then what's the ring for? A promise. That I choose you. Not because a contract requires it, but because life without you isn't life at all." Isabella took the ring, slipped it on her finger. "I choose you too. Even though you're still terrible at emotions, I'm getting better. You are. Slowly, painfully. But you are." They sat together as night claimed the sky. Stars emerging like promises kept. "Thank you," Tiago said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up. For leaving so I had to find my way to you. For loving someone who didn't know how to be loved. Thank you for being brave enough to kneel in the rain. For giving up everything to prove what mattered. For choosing to be healed instead of staying broken." In the distance, children laughed. Construction continued. Lives were being built from rubble and hope and stubborn determination. And two people who'd started as strangers bound by contracts learned that the most valuable agreements are the ones written by hearts, brave enough to risk everything. In the end, it wasn't $50 million that bought her heart. It was the broken man who learned to kneel in the rain and stand in love, proving that the most valuable contracts are the ones written by two people brave enough to tear up all the others. The end.